clearly we're seeing a repetition in many respects today of what transpired in Western Ukraine with the OUN UPA in the 1940s and especially in the late 40s, early 50s. And we can, sort of let's call it a semi-objective, semi-neutral observer would see that the response on the part of Ukrainians to take up arms, throw Molotov cocktails, engage in sabotage, defend their country, sometimes, viciously. I'm sure that vicious attacks have taken place as well on the part of Ukrainians. The growing indifference that all of us feel to the casualties. I look at the number of dead Russians, and in the past I would have said, oh my God, how terrible. And nowadays I say, oh, good, it's rising. And I suspect many of us feel exactly the same way. And it's somewhat disturbing, but again, it's just kind of natural given the fact that your nation, that your people is on the verge of extermination. So if you can appreciate that circumstances drive people to take up arms and engage in an insurgency, and that those circumstances entail oppression, repression, extermination by a country or a people that regards you as their enemy, and not they. I mean, it's not that we hated the Russians, Russians hate us. Well, anyway, so if you consider all of that, put it all together, you should be able to conclude that despite the fact that the Ukrainian nationalists did indeed commit atrocities and did some bad things, yes, of course, but overall they were responding to Polish, German, and Soviet oppression. And they were responding in the manner that many national liberation movements throughout the world respond, that is to say, by means of violence. Again, I don't condone violence, I mean, if only because I'm more of a coward than anything else. But at the same time, I understand why people resort to violence under various circumstances. It's the only way you can defend yourself against a dictatorial exterminationist regime, whether that of the Nazis or that of the Soviets. Now, will those historians, again, I won't mention names, but they're known to everybody, will they see the light and perhaps come to a reevaluation? My guess is the answer is probably no, because they're just too much invested in their views. They spent the last 20, 30 years arguing that nothing motivated the nationalists other than some kind of crazy ideology, which is nonsense. I mean, it's nonsense even for someone who knows nothing about history. And having invested this much, it would be a real, they'd be taking a smack in the face. I mean, they'd be punching themselves in the face. And it would require real humility to say, well, maybe I overstated the case just a bit. And from what I've seen in the writings of these people, humility is the very last thing that characterizes them. So I don't see a difference taking place there. Where the difference will take place, and not may, but will take place, is amongst people, scholars, students who are only beginning to study the Ukrainian resistance during World War II, and who are evaluating the different perspectives. And they will be affected by what's going on in Ukraine today, and they are likely to use that as a point of comparison to the nationalists in World War II. And there I think there should be hope. And that will be, of course, that relates to Ukrainian Canadians, Ukrainian Americans, but also to Canadian Canadians and American Americans, because they've, of course, responded very positively to ongoing events. People genuinely do believe, and rightly so, that this is a heroic resistance. And once you said it's heroic, it will be very difficult to switch.